I will tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, for network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV, you plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million averaging, also equally horrible. And then
what happens when Greg Gutfeld, the human espresso shot of sarcasm, links up with Megyn Kelly, the queen of icy comebacks? They don't just roast Jimmy Kimmel, they deep fry him in primetime grease and toss him on a platter with a sizzling side of "bless your heart." Kimmel tried to clap back, but it flopped harder than a soggy napkin in a hurricane. This isn't just some TV beef. It's a 5-star flame-grilled takedown served extra salty. And guess what? It's only getting messier by the minute. Back in the day, over in late-night land, Jimmy Kimmel was just a harmless jester tossing out soft jokes about burritos and B-listers.
For everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it! You big Now...
And that's when the roast officially hit full heat. First came the diagnosis. Gutfeld diagnosed Kimmel with something he called moral overcompensation syndrome, a rare affliction known to strike former shock jocks who suddenly find their conscience too late to save the act. According to Gutfeld, symptoms include soft preaching mid-joke, teary eyes on cue cards, and punchlines so limp they trip over themselves. Then came the treatment, and Gutfeld wasn't gentle. He tore into Kimmel's rebrand with the finesse of a jackhammer during a silent auction. The same guy who once staged fake viral twerking disasters now stood handing out political advice like a cashier at Whole Foods who skimmed a thread on social media.
you all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it, because they accurately deduced that he could still be the Democratic nominee, and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right.
And yes, if you were wondering, Gutfeld brought receipts. Not just a folder, he rolled out a whole file cabinet. Ratings charts, cringe sketches, and ancient clips from The Man Show that aged like warm milk in a tanning bed. This wasn't a comedy critique. This was a full-blown roast autopsy with surgical notes. Then it got even better. Enter Megyn Kelly, walking in like a calm storm, espresso in hand, dressed like elegance with a mission. She wasn't just joining the roast. She was launching scorched earth policy. Quiet, cold, and cutting reputations down like furniture missing half the screws.
Poor Jimmy. True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate.
While Greg Gutfeld brought out the comedic chainsaw to shred what was left of Jimmy Kimmel's dignity, Megyn Kelly pulled up with surgical precision. She snapped on gloves, grabbed the scalpel, and went to work slicing through every inch of hypocrisy stitched into his public image. No shouting, no theatrics, just cold facts and sharper cuts than a barber with something to prove. She calmly laid out the receipts, alphabetized, categorized, and labeled under K for jokes that aged like spoiled dairy. Every contradiction was stacked like evidence in a courtroom, and the jury was the public watching it all go down. Now let's rewind that footage. Remember The Man Show? That testosterone-charged circus of bikini contests, beer guzzling, and bro-fueled mayhem Kimmel co-hosted with Adam Carolla? Yeah, that one. The highlight reel might as well have been titled, "Here's Beer, Here's Skin, Here's Jimmy acting prehistoric in high definition."
You got the Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos into the evening Academy Awards broadcast with Kimmel, and ABC elevating, the blackface loving Kimmel. They, at the same time, fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for trying to defend one contestant on, The Bachelorette, for saying, gee, I know I went to this antebellum party, a couple years ago. I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it. And all he said was, are we judging her by today's standards, or are we judging her by, old standards, whatever. He was basically trying to say, are we being too hard on her? Got fired. Chris Harrison has to be fired by ABC. I don't know why, because he's not a committed leftist, because he's not out there more saying all the terrible things about Republicans that Jimmy Kimmel says. So this is them saying, we get it. We're an ally, right? And I guess maybe they're trying to make up with their racist past without ever acknowledging.
The whole thing felt like a frat house commercial sponsored by body spray and unchecked pride. But somehow, through a wild twist, Kimmel's now positioned himself as America's moral compass, wagging his finger from a throne built on lectures and selective memory. Megyn Kelly wasn't letting that slide. She came in with sniper precision and broke down the transformation like a prosecutor with all the files. She reminded the world exactly who we were dealing with. A guy who once thought it was peak comedy to ask women to bounce on trampolines for cheap laughs. And now he's out here calling people out for decade-old tweets. The level of irony could power a whole city block for a month. But she wasn't finished yet. No chance. She stepped right onto the third rail of his career. The sketch the internet never deleted. You know the one. And while some hope the memory fades, the web's got receipts for life.
The killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a...
He once impersonated NBA star Karl Malone, fully decked out in blackface, and thought he struck comedy gold. It aired on network television without a blink from the execs, back when nobody in power dared to question it. Today, that clip alone could spark a media firestorm and maybe even a congressional investigation. Megyn Kelly didn't even have to explain it. She just held up the mirror and let the reflection shout louder than any commentary ever could. Kimmel went from being late night's drunken uncle to suddenly claiming the role of America's moral compass. And Kelly delivered one of the most brutal lines of the roast, saying it without raising her voice, like a bored therapist reading someone's shady browser history out loud. No rage, just destruction. And then came the knockout punch. Jimmy Kimmel's so-called evolution from the guy cracking bathroom jokes and performing blackface to the so-called defender of truth and destroyer of disinformation. It's wild enough to be its own Netflix plot twist. This is the same man who used to profit off tired stereotypes and now stands tall behind a podium, talking about justice, values, and moral standards, as if his past had been wiped clean by the internet gods. But nothing ever vanishes online, it all stays. Kelly sliced through this act with cold, clean precision. She exposed how he's been trying to brand himself as the intellectual watchdog of late-night television, hunting down lies like some heroic truth seeker. But here's the twist. He's fact-checking everyone else with the confidence of someone who's never dared to fact-check his own legacy.
For everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it! You big Now...
Like a malfunctioning GPS yelling "turn left" while driving off a cliff. Jimmy Kimmel's attempts to fact-check the world come off as completely disconnected. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly watched from the sidelines and skipped the mirror altogether. Her takedown, not just harsh, it was surgical. She tore down Kimmel's moral high ground like it was a budget IKEA coffee table. All veneer, zero support, and definitely missing a screw. She didn't just poke a few holes in his image. She Swiss cheesed his whole persona and handed it back with a sticky note that read, "Return to sender." Because when your moral soapbox is built on past blunders and cherry-picked outrage, all it takes is one person calmly pointing at your track record. And boom, the whole house of cards collapses. And Megyn didn't just point. She underlined, circled it in red ink, and stapled the evidence to late-night television's forehead for everyone to see. You remember Megyn, blonde, sharp, and blacklisted from brunch spots for daring to speak her mind. Her method wasn't explosive, it was lethal. While Gutfeld mocked Kimmel's fall from comedic relevance, Kelly broke it down like a prosecutor laying out charges in court. No shouting, just cold, steady precision. She read the receipts like tax returns. One by one, sketches that were once buried deep beneath Kimmel's squeaky clean rebrand got pulled out and dusted off. These were the kind of clips that made even Howard Stern do a double take back in the day. Kelly didn't need a laugh track. She brought documented facts. And the worst part? She wasn't wrong. There's something almost poetic about watching a man who once mocked everything in pop culture, now desperately trying to be its moral compass.
I will tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, for network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV, you plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million averaging, also equally horrible. And then,
according to Megyn Kelly, Jimmy Kimmel didn't just change. He traded authenticity for cheap applause. And not the real kind. The hollow, rehearsed clapping of studio crowds expecting laughs, but getting climate lectures instead. While Gutfeld lit up the screen with sarcastic fireworks, Kelly laid down verbal court filings like a legal thriller. Kimmel's entire career? She made it Exhibit A in Hollywood's favorite game, selective amnesia. Remember when he painted his face and called it edgy comedy? Remember the off-color zingers thrown for ratings? Oh, wait, we're not supposed to bring that up anymore, right? Well, Megyn Kelly did, and she didn't whisper it. She served it wrapped in a bow of commentary sharp enough to strip paint off a sports car. She highlighted how Kimmel's moral high horse looked more like a rented pony fresh from a backlot storage unit. This was a guy who built his fame mocking people on live TV, now wringing his hands over civility, like he's auditioning for a Hallmark PSA. But this wasn't just a takedown. It was an exposé, laced with punchlines and dripping with receipts. Then came the moment of synergy. Gutfeld, still sipping from a sarcasm flask made of pure spite, lobbed another haymaker straight to the legacy. How does a guy lose his comedic edge so fast he becomes a walking political bumper sticker in skinny jeans? That one hit hard. And Megyn, she didn't flinch. She pulled out yet another archived clip from Kimmel's highlight reel of contradictions. Just when you thought late night couldn't get any more self-righteous, here comes Jimmy Kimmel, waddling back in with another monologue that sounds like a blackout diary entry. And waiting for him, Greg Gutfeld, Fox's king of snark, mic in hand, ready to turn sarcasm into a full-body disinfectant.
million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free, that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults.
Gutfeld didn't just poke fun at Kimmel's new therapy hour for cable news refugees. He tore it apart like IKEA furniture assembled by a sleep-deprived raccoon. According to Gutfeld, Kimmel's shift from late-night clown to emotional support pundit isn't evolution. It's a full-blown comedic mutation. This isn't late-night comedy anymore. It's politically charged bedtime stories wrapped in a nervous laugh track. Greg calls it what it is: performance anxiety dressed up as political wisdom. One moment, Kimmel's cracking a half-hearted Trump joke. The next, he's nearly in tears, clutching a throw pillow, quoting polling stats like he's hosting a televised group therapy session. It's basically a TED Talk sprinkled with awkward punchlines nobody asked for. And Gutfeld? A true connoisseur of discomfort. He sliced through the sanctimonious fog with surgical precision. His take? If the audience needs to clap after every joke just to prove they're not cringing, that's not comedy. It's emotional validation with stage lighting. Translation? Kimmel's laugh track got replaced by moral applause from an audience so desperate to feel enlightened, they'd probably cheer during a 5-day forecast, so long as it roasted Republicans. And Gutfeld doesn't just mock the jokes, he torches the entire structure. Watching Jimmy these days, Gutfeld quips, is like watching your old high school guidance counselor try open mic night. Awkward, sweaty, and trying way too hard to make you care about climate change in the middle of a half-baked GOP joke. And let's be honest, when Greg Gutfeld starts sounding like the last voice of logic and comedy on television, it's a sign that something in Hollywood has completely veered off course. Probably right after giving Jimmy Kimmel another season of teary-eyed monologues delivered in polished cufflinks. What made this clash unforgettable was the sheer contrast. Gutfeld's attacks hit like a raccoon with a megaphone, wild, chaotic, and somehow completely addicting. You laugh, you wince, and then you want more. Megyn Kelly, on the other hand, was the scalpel. She didn't just criticize, she carved. Precision cuts, exposing contradictions like a surgeon with the grace of a ballerina spinning with a blade. Side by side, they didn't just take shots. They turned Kimmel from a comedian into something else entirely. A confused mouthpiece for causes barely researched, barely understood. And through all of it, Kimmel stayed quiet. Maybe the roar of the applause signs drowned out the critique, or maybe silence felt safer than stepping off the moral pedestal built on old punchlines and fresh reinvention. But the message? It landed. Gutfeld exposed the irony of a man scolding disinformation while casually spinning his own monologues like press releases. Kelly highlighted how a guy preaching against cancel culture had practically scrubbed his own past with digital bleach and strategic search engine tricks. And the audience? They didn't need a response. They got the truth instead. The realization hit hard. Kimmel's evolution wasn't some bold awakening. It was calculated. It was timed. It smelled less like growth and more like panic. Gutfeld joked it felt sponsored by a PR firm. And Kelly? She dropped the truth bomb to end all truth bombs. Kimmel wasn't punching up. He was punching sideways, safe, rehearsed, only in directions pre-approved by producers. This is the same guy who once poked fun at Hollywood, now fully morphed into its echo chamber, complete with performative guilt, perfectly timed tears, and social justice sermons squeezed between luxury car commercials. That's what made this takedown so tasty. They weren't just mocking a man, they were ripping apart a rebrand so polished it practically begged to be roasted. Gutfeld kept the sarcasm flowing like boxed wine at a school fundraiser. Kelly brought the heat with facts that could burn through steel. And Jimmy? He just kept talking to a mirror that only showed the pieces he liked. No punchline needed. Because when two media pros tear apart your credibility without breaking a sweat, the joke's not just on you. It is you. If you enjoyed this takedown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that bell. More explosive stories are on the way.